I actually got inspired by our podcast. I feel just energized, and I realized that I've done a lot of good things. I think my glass is usually half full rather than half empty. He's so multi-talented. He's done the roots reggae and the dub in the 70s. He used to run his sound system, and then he was part of the whole Love's Rock movement, and he plays everything. I was signed to a major in the 90s, and in the 90s, labels like to they really like to remix stuff. I'm turning everything off now. Sorry.
Coming up, the update interview with Papa D. Now stick around because he's got an announcement at the end of the interview. You're listening to Pop, the History Makers, with me, Steve Blame. So Daniel, Papa D, welcome back to this update interview. We did a pretty long interview last year where we went really into your history, your personal history about your mother who essentially brought you up, your father who you hadn't seen. Your mother took you to London, took you to a record store, and this is sort of where everything was triggered. And we talked about fame and also about how Clive Davis said to you, you could have been Shaggy.
No, you should have been. You know Shaggy? That should have been you. I love that.
That was such a brilliant quote. Yeah. Anyhow, it's been a while since then. So first of all, how are you? And what have you been doing since?
I am pretty good, even though the Swedish winter is kind of killing me. 3 weeks ago, you could hear birds, but now it's snowing again. It's getting colder, but it's getting earlier mornings. The sun is up earlier, and so I'm quite good. I've been working quite a lot, and I actually got inspired by our podcast because I started digging into, just old stuff, old DAT tapes, unreleased stuff, photographs. When we started talking about the old days, that was fun.
So what did you find?
Well, I found quite a lot of songs. I mean, not fantastic stuff, but there's still stuff attached to every album that was never released, and a lot of weird remixes. I was signed to a major in the 90s, and in the 90s, labels like to they really like to remix stuff. So, oh my God, it's Ministry of stuff that wasn't released. Ministry of Sounds, Daddy O from Stetsasonic, really cool stuff, but it was never released.
It's really quite emotional though when you go through old stuff sometimes, isn't it? Because it brings back other memories. Did it bring back anything for you that was quite moving or fun, or just a memory basically?
It was a lot of fun, but a lot of things I hadn't thought about for a very long time. A few people that passed, from those days, but mostly good memories. Mostly just kind of jogged my just picking stuff up and reading stuff, and I went to my storage actually, and it's flight tickets and old calendars, and it's good. A lot of all of the stuff isn't good, but basically I got inspired and I got motivated to. I'm kind of in a good creative phase. I'm in the studio like every week now, and we're trying to put out a lot of stuff. So it's good.
So it's also inspired you to do new music apart from actually looking at the past and what was unreleased.
Yeah, and getting stuff out. The pandemic has been, it's just been like a big, long cramp situation. And now I'm putting out stuff. And I'm going into the studio, I'm getting deadlines, and I'm for myself, and I'm setting dates, and I'm adding stuff to digital portals and putting out some vinyl as well.
Brilliant. Now you released a track a few weeks ago, I think, called Hold On. Tell me about how that's come about then, specifically.
It's weird because that's actually a remix. The original song is a bit more rock soul, a bit more live instruments, and this is a kind of 90s sounding remix, and it sounds which is really what we talked about, that era, and it really sounds like a 90s house mix to me. I mean, right? It's got those sounds, and Well, the song is just a song I wrote. It's actually 3 or 4 years old, pre-pandemic. And the remix is good, so we put it out first. Just get stuff out. Me and the Swedish reggae, basically an MC, reggae DJ, and an artist has been around as long as I have been around. And we're going to release one digital tune every 5th week. So we just released one a month ago. So there's one coming up in a couple of weeks.
So this is the big plan, is it? You've actually got a timetable.
Yeah. Featuring my son in the intro. My 5-year-old is on the track.
Oh, that's sweet.
You're fighting in Swedish, he says. And then the song goes on about, the whole gun situation in Sweden that we're having at the moment. Yeah, so that's good.
So tell me about Dread End Street, which is a reggae version of Dead End Street from the Kinks, an old 60s song, really classic song.
Really classic song. I always loved it. It's like a working class anthem, moody, kind of music hall sounding, very, very British, very, very English. I love the Kinks. I was hanging with Ray Davis a few years back when he had a Swedish girlfriend in Gothenburg, my hometown. Lovely guy. I grew up with listening to the Kinks. I always loved them. Reggae has always been flirting with the Kinks. Lola was a big track in the 70s as a Trojan single. I was down in Jamaica. I did my documentary down there, and I always ended every episode doing a cover version with the local musicians. It was also a way for me to get those local musicians to do an interview, because old studio musicians in Jamaica, they're not really interested in promoting books, TV, magazines, because they never got paid then, and they don't, and if they don't, so they wanted, I think they wanted money, but instead I gave them a studio session. I paid them good money, and we recorded Dead End Street, and of course that became Dread End Street.
Tell me about then. I mean, you mentioned that it's the Dead End Street and the Kinks were this sort of working class band who sang about real working class issues. So how does that translate when you make it Dread End Street? How's the connection for you?
I think reggae has always been, like in reggae they would call this a sufferer's tune, just like everyday people's struggle has always been a big part of reggae, and this song is the subject is really what that is, and just the moodiness of the song kind of works well with the roots reggae, I find. And I had some of the best musicians ever from Jamaica: Flabba Holt on bass, Robbie Lynn on keyboard, Dwight Pickney on guitar, and Leroy Horsemouth Wallace on drums. That's like they play on half my record collection.
And
so they did a fantastic interpretation of the song, it turned it into real roots reggae.
And one of the people you work with, of course, he wrote my favorite song of all time, which is Silly Games from Channel K. I just love that track. So
fantastic.
That is, of course, Dennis Bovell. So tell me about working with him.
Well, he started coming to Sweden. There was an engineer who passed away, Internal Dread. They were really good friends. Tom Hofvander was his name, and he worked as the sound engineer for Linton Kwesi Johnson and the Dennis Bovell dub band. And he was kind of like Dennis' apprentice as well in the studio. So he was a very good dub engineer and an engineer overall. He was fantastic. So I met Dennis a lot of times. So, we were hanging out in Sweden, and we did some live gigs together. And of course, he's always been one of my favorites. I mean, he's so multi-talented. He's done the roots reggae and the dub in the 70s. He used to run his sound system, and then he was part of the whole Love's Rock movement in the late 70s. And he plays everything, sings everything. I mean, he's just music, and he is the loveliest and the funniest guy.
Well,
I know.
You mentioned Linton Kwesi Johnson, this fella Cootie he worked with. He even worked with Bananarama. You know, he worked with, like, because he had so much success, particularly with the Silly Games and the Lovers Rock stuff back then, they all wanted to work with him.
And he's so musical, so he can do anything. His music, it doesn't matter what genre, and he's got a really good sense of any kind of music. You know, he worked with the Slits, he worked with, you know, new wave bands. And have you heard his stuff lately? You know,
no, I haven't, but I know he worked with Thompson Twins back in the 80s as well. I mean, he worked with so many people. So what does he bring specifically that works for you? What does he allow you to be? Do you see what I mean in the studio?
Well, I mean, first of all, he's got a sound. Not a lot of people can say that. So basically, we had the rhythm track from Jamaica, and then we did some overdubs. I did vocals, and we did some percussion, and he sang some backing vocal. He's an amazing vocalist, and he's really good at arranging vocals. And then we mixed it, and it sounds fantastic. And it sounds like Dennis Bovell. But then he did the B-side is a dub mix, and it's just, that's what he does. He's the, you know, his anthology is called The Dub Master.
There he is.
There he is. Could have been
it's Clive Davis coming back again.
Could have been. I have to turn it off. Sorry, I was gonna turn it off, and now I'm calling emergency.
It's the emergency lovers rock unit.
Wow. Okay, I'm turning everything off now. Sorry. Yeah, so he brings his sound and his musical sensibility. That's what he does. He's amazing. And also, it's just a lot of fun. I realized working with people, you have to have fun as well. If you're in a band, if there's tension, it's not fun. You know, you have to surround yourself with people that work has to be fun, right?
Yeah, and this is going to come out on an EP, isn't it?
Well, so basically, when that was just a one-off idea, but then I realized there's so many great songs that the Kings did, and they could easily be turned into reggae. So I'm thinking like a 4-track EP, and of course it's going to be called Kinky Reggae. Not really original, but fun. So Kinky Reggae, 4-track EP with the Kings coming up, but probably going to be next year. I've started to arrange, some of the songs, and it's soon come, like to say in Jamaica.
One thing about the Kinks' Dead End Street was this video, which at that point really couldn't be termed a video. It was a sort of short, it was a film in a sense, and filmed in London. And it was really quite, well, actually the BBC wanted to ban it because it was quite, for them, quite extreme for that time, like showing people in coffins and stuff like that, and quite morbid and depressing for that time. But of course, as a video, it was really one of the benchmarks of videos. Yeah,
really ahead of its time.
Fascinating piece of work, because no band had done something with such sort of social realism in it. So I just wondered.
The darkness and the heaviness. I mean, the Beatles did their things, but that was more fun. Even
this was really, you know, they're dressed up as what are they called? Undertakers. That's the word I was trying to say. They're dressed up as undertakers and traveling down and collecting coffins, and this has this really hardcore social realism. So I just wondered if you ever make a video to this, or if you ever do something to this, how would you represent the song?
Oh, videos nowadays is a bit. We're not in the 90s where you kind of you have a story and you have helicopters and big. I don't know. It's depending on budget.
No, the reason I say that, I mean, it was a bit of fun, but the idea behind it is that, you know, you mentioned gun crime in Sweden, and I just wondered whether there was sort of social realism aspect in Sweden that you could highlight in a video about Dead End Street.
That's a good idea, actually. That's a good idea, because, you know, the way everything changed, there's a lot of Dead End Streets now in Sweden. It's crazy.
One thing that I noticed about you is that you seem to have, from last time, and I don't know whether it was sort of this on the day and so on and so forth, but you've got much more power and much more go, and you feel much more vibrant and as if you've moved into another new era. Do you know what I mean? That how we do, and it really feels like that.
I'm glad you noticed. I'm glad you're noticing, because that's really what it is. I feel just energized, and I realize that I've done a lot of good things, and I need to keep on working. Yeah, sometimes you just get into this, especially during the pandemic. You get into this kind of, but you realize your worth sometimes, and you realize you got to rediscover your whatever talent, or rediscover whatever you have. And I feel good at the moment. It's a lot of fun again. And as I said, it's all about having fun and working, and that's what I feel at the moment. So that's good. I'm glad you noticed.
You mentioned in an email to me that people had heard the interview and they really liked it. What did they highlight? Were there things about your life that are in that interview that they didn't know, and that they, or how did they represent that to you? Was it just that they liked the interview, or they actually sort of found out some new information about you?
I just think they appreciated the fact that it was deep. It wasn't just, oh, you got a new album. I remember that song. It was the things about my mother and how I discovered music in a way through my mother, and also the weird public scandal that I was involved in, or got dragged into and dragged through rather. Yeah, it was just, I think people thought it was deep, and yeah.
I think what really appealed to me was your humanity came through in that, by talking to you, I really sort of got this picture of a real human figure, and the things that you had gone through, some of them quite difficult. And also, although laughing at the Clive Davis thing, of course, if you go into a career and you want to be successful, to actually have, in a sense, missed out on that success is a big and can be a really painful thing. But you've always dealt with those sort of things with humor, and also managed to carry on and do what you wanted to do in life.
Yeah, I never felt that I was, or I should have been up there. I think my glass is usually half full rather than half empty. So I reached so far. Oh, look at the things I've done. And then, it could have been the next level, but it didn't happen. I'm happy. And I kind of see it. I thought it was funny. That's why I always retell the story, because I thought it was, you should have been Shaggy,
Yeah, well, you still can.
I still can.
Do you want to hear about the interviews first? If you do, subscribe, and whatever, whether you do or don't. Let's continue with Papa D.
But I was thinking the video for Dread and Street, I also have footage from Jamaica, from when I did the TV thing. So I have these fantastic original musicians playing the song down in Lego studio down in Kingston. So I'll probably use some of that. But that's a good idea, bringing in the social element as well. That's good. I like that. Thank you.
At the end of this, I mean, this is just a short interview, and this is just the interview which is about what you're doing today. So it's not deep or anything. And anyone who wants to watch that should look at the YouTube channel, and they'll be connected to it at the end of this interview. So how do you see your future now in terms of what you want to achieve? Is it really just about releasing new music and seeing how it goes? Or is there a very specific goal that you want to achieve?
I never look way ahead. Like it's just release this song. I got this album in the pipeline. I'm actually going to start doing podcasts, because I used to do radio in Sweden, like for 8 years. I used to do a 2-hour show kind of. So I've got equipment and everything still in the boxes. So I'm going to start doing that. But I think my goals are kind of like, I'm going to do this first, and that, and I got songs and I got projects, but I got a lot of stuff in the pipeline. That's it. That's the main thing. I got a lot of stuff planned.
The last thing is that you say that the glass is half full. Of course, a pessimist would see it as half empty. I see it as full, because half of it might be fluid and the other half is air, so it's full. because I'm an eternal optimist.
Yes, you have to be.
So Daniel, thanks very much. I wish you luck, particularly with Dread End Street, because it's such a great track, and you've done such a brilliant version of it.
Thank you.
As I said, I'm going to go now, and I'm going to go down that rabbit hole and look at Dennis Bovell and what he's doing today. But I loved all the stuff that he did back then, so I'm sure.
Oh, he's working with big people, big names, great remixes. Check it out.
Yeah, I will do. Daniel, brilliant. And I'll speak to you again. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much. See you soon. Take care.
Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews. And here is where you can connect.